How can I be a good parent to young adults? Here are some tips and techniques for success. Parenting young adults is a whole different experience from parenting children or even teenagers. And there are some common pitfalls. I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins. I've been consulting with parents professionally for almost 30 years now, and I've got 4 of my own young adults. I'm going to share with you 3 tips and 3 techniques that will help you to have a great experience as you parent these young adults. Tip number 1, get really clear about what you control and what you don't. And there's a little hint here. Most of what's going on in your young adult's life, you don't control. What do you control? Well, you control what you provide. You control your own attitude. You control how you show up. And I invite you to put your focus on those items. Years ago, I was doing a little home improvement project that involved some plumbing, and I don't know anything about plumbing. I'm a psychologist. So I called my dad. He knows a lot of stuff. And he said, Paul, there's only 2 rules to plumbing. Okay, that'd be helpful. What are they? Water runs downhill. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't lick your fingers. Okay, well that's good to know if you're replacing a toilet, right? I think parenting young adults is very similar. Some things you control and other things you don't. That's rule number 1. That's the water runs downhill. It's just a natural law. And rule number 2, don't lick your fingers, meaning pay attention to what you control and put your energy into that instead of getting all tied up in knots about the things that you don't control. Now, one of the reasons this is so important is because effective, positive parenting is based on understanding, control, and maturity. It's not the purpose of this video to get into that whole model, but I'll give you a copy of it. Just go to the URL that's on the screen right now, drpauljenkins.com/stages. Pick up the model. It's totally free. I'm giving that to you as a gift. And notice that it's about stage, not age. Stage meaning stages of moral development. Our kids, regardless of their age, are going to be primarily in one of the 3 stages that I describe in that model. If your young adult is still operating at a lower stage, we're going to handle that differently than if they are at a higher stage of moral development. So you'll see what I mean when you pick up the model. Once again, drpauljenkins.com/stages. Tip number 2, somebody has to be attached to the outcomes. If it's you, it's not your child, meaning your young adult child. Notice that what you get all bent out of shape or tied in knots about is usually something that they control. In tip number 1, we talked about get clear about what you control and what you don't. Because if you get attached to something you don't control, you are at the mercy of the decisions of whoever controls it. If you're attached to it, they don't have to be. So your detachment from the outcomes is going to make a huge difference here, and it will change how you show up. If you are really attached to their outcomes, you're probably going to remind them. Now we call it reminding, they call it nagging, or something even worse. If we're detached from the outcomes, we can put our attachment energy back into where it should be, which is the relationship, not the outcomes. The relationship. This will be easier to do if you follow tip number 3. Your job is to love them, no matter what, and even if. Well, even if those outcomes happen that I don't want, yes, especially then. Even if they fail in whatever it is that they're trying to do, yes. Even if they're arrested and taken to jail, yes. Play the even if game if you need to. No matter what, and even if. Your job is to love them. When you remember that, you can detach from the outcomes better. It's not your job to make sure that they anything. In fact, check it out. How are you doing at that? Making sure that they. Yeah, you kind of stink at that. You're not very good at that at all. Why? Because you don't control it. So you're detaching from the outcomes and getting back to your job, which is to love them no matter what, and even if. Okay, can you see already how this is changing the energy of the interaction? I'll give you those 3 specific techniques that you can apply based on these tips as soon as you take a moment to subscribe. Will you do that next? Just hit that subscribe button and share this video with others, because you know some other parents who are scratching their head about this right now too, don't you? All right, so here's a few techniques that you can specifically implement right away. Technique number 1, set up a family gathering. And I'm talking about some kind of a regular basis family gathering. The way Vicki and I do this in our home is something that we call Jenkins Junction. Jenkins is our family name, and Junction means we're coming together. None of our adult sons live in the same state that we do. So we set up this gathering on Zoom, and it's on a regular basis. So every second Sunday of the month at 7:00 p.m., we get together on Zoom and we have a little Jenkins Junction. You might be thinking, we're not at that point. My kids don't want to talk to me, or they don't want to come around. We're going to be working on that, okay? You're changing the dynamics. If you've been in a position before where you're really attached to the outcomes, they're probably trying to avoid you a little. As you get focused on those 3 tips, that dynamic starts to shift and change. But here's what I can say about this technique. You are responsible for the invitation, not for the response. So don't withhold the invitation just because you're afraid that they won't accept it. Go ahead and put the invitation out there. You are responsible for the invitation, not the response. Technique number 2, become an engaged observer and fan of your adult children rather than an advisor or advice giver. You can give advice if they ask for it, but even then I would be cautious about telling them what to do. Probably you don't know what the best answers are for them. Now, this is going to go against some of your training as a parent, because we're kind of trained, taught, and educated to think that parents know best. As I get farther into my own experience with that, I'm not so sure that that's true. In fact, I kind of hope, and don't you as well, that your children are smarter than you are. Because if they are, maybe they've got ideas about how to move forward with their life that don't even make sense to me, but would turn out to be the best things for them to do. Humility is defined by giving up our need to be right in exchange for being open. How would that feel if you could simply be open? So we're stepping back from that, I need to fix them or correct them or make sure that they whatever, or the judgmental, I don't approve of how they're running their life. Just notice if that's showing up anywhere. Step away from that and into the curious, engaged observer role. You get to be their greatest fan as you sit back and watch the miracle unfold of whatever their life's going to be. That's the position, okay? That's the energy that we're trying to create. Technique number 3 has to do with 3 specific messages that you can practice sending, or at least thinking, when it comes to your adult children. And here they are. Message number 1, I love you, no matter what, and even if. One of my sons helped me to see that, yeah, we already know that you love us. I want to know that you choose us. And I love that he pointed that out to me, because it involves, hey, look, I don't control your life anymore, but I choose to be present with you because, not only because I love you, but because I am intensely interested in whatever it is that you're doing. So that energy, I love you, no matter what and even if. Message number 2, if you have any questions, ask. We're not going to cram it down their throat. That irritates and annoys young adults. It irritates and annoys teens and children too. We're not going to try to force our ideas or opinion upon them. We're simply going to be available should they ever ask. And even then, we're going to be cautious. If you have any questions, ask. And then message number 3, good luck, which is our acknowledgement that we don't control this, they do. But we wish them well as they move forward with whatever choices they're going to make for themselves. This way we put ourselves in a position where it's more likely that we can actually maintain a healthy, satisfying relationship with our young adult children. I hope that helps, and I want to hear from you if it does, or even if it doesn't. Reach out to me. And remember, I offered you a tool earlier, the stages of moral development. Go get that. It's going to make some sense to you as you look at your role as a parent. drpauljenkins.com/stages, and I'll put it right in your inbox.